Welcome to Satisfactory Update 7. My name is Nilaus and I am going to look at blueprints. Fix-it blueprints. This is a new thing in Update 7 and it is the promised land. It has finally happened. Hell has frozen over and CoffeeStain Studios has caved to the demands of the roaring fans and actually delivered blueprints. So, is this everything we've ever dreamed about? Is it something that will be solving the most glaring issue of Satisfactory, the fact that it takes 10 hours to build a decent factory? Well, unfortunately not. And in this video, I'm going to explain how blueprints work, how the limitations of how they chose to implement it, and then I'm going to be talking a bit about and giving some examples of how to make the best use of what is actually here. So if you like this video, hit the like button, consider subscribing for more factory content and architecture games content here on the channel. Let's start with the very basics. How do we unlock it? Well, we see tier 4 and here's the blueprint. It takes 200 steel, that's the only problem here. That means you have to get to tier 4 in order to get this. And I think it's good that it's only on tier 4. That means you need to launch the elevator once and then you can get it. I would recommend that as soon as you do that, you use your first tickets for steel beams. Use your first 4 tickets. I mean, maybe not the first 4 tickets, but definitely use the tickets here to get that as soon as you launch the first elevator launch, so you get the blueprints and then you have it available. That's gonna make it even easier, so you can use it for such as stuff like steel, for example. Now we have it. Let's take a look at the building itself. It is up here. It's called the Blueprint Designer and it is pretty much 5 by 5. We're going to be building a little location over here, that way we can place it down. So here we have the new building. This is the Blueprint Designer. It is has an outside dimension of about 5 by 5 foundations. It has an inside foundation or inside size of 4 by 4 foundations and 32 meters in height. That is 32 by 32 by 32. That's the cube, and anything within that is what is part of the blueprint, and it cannot go across these lines. So this is very much a prison that you are building within, and anything in there is going to be the blueprint design. I think that's a really good idea. I don't think the size is a good idea, but I think that it's a good way within the confines of the Satisfactory model to make sure that you sort of have it, because I think that they have good collision control, so they can easily see if there are collisions with the edges. So this is what it is, and it is not powered, so that means you can build it anywhere you want, and I think that's a good idea. So you can go out when you're out in the world building a factory, then you can plop this down and do some design work and then apply that. It has 2 interactable parts. It has a blueprint storage box where we have stuff stored. This is where you draw from for the blueprint designer, and also where you put things in when you clear the design. Then we have the blueprint UI designer, where we can make new blueprints, we can load blueprints, we can clear the designer, and then we're ready to work. So I'll be walking through step by step how to make a design in here, and you can see that there is a nice grid. I think it's really nice that they made these little cross points here. Then let's go in and build like a very standard basic smelter design. Somehow I can't float in there. And just to give you an idea about what it could look like. And is that middle? That's kind of middle, yes. And then we also get some inputs, like the very basic things that if I wanted to do a smelter, and then I also want to get outbound again here, and we get a belt. And we get a belt in, and we get a recipe. Let's call it iron for whatever reason. There we take power, and I want to get that to this location. And for example, that could be very much like a very basic smelter design. I will be storing this one in, and we call it basic smelter. Someone already made one that's called basic smelter. I wonder what that was for. There, and select image, and I save it on top of the one that's already there. Good. So now we have our first little design. You can build it as big or as small as you like, but it has to be within these areas. One very important thing, you cannot go out of this. You can't build on the edge. Some things you can build on the edge, like walls, but not, it's tested out what things you can build on the edge, which ones you cannot. And here, if we then click the clear design, it's gone from the view, and then all the materials are put in here. If you then go into load, look at that. In update 7, there is float for the hovercraft. It never stands still anymore. Damn. If we go into the load, one of the myriad of things. Then we have different books and then categories and all that stuff. I just put my stuff here. We just made one called Basic Smelter. As soon as we click it, it draws in the resources that we have. It draws it from here, first from the storage box, and then draws from our inventory afterwards. Then if we can also see that it is here. So this is if we have a blueprint, you load a blueprint from someone else, and you want to just expand it or improve it or that kind of thing, then you can do it like this. Now that's not exactly how blueprints are going to work in the real world, so let's actually check that. Well, we press the Q button and we have a new tab called Blueprints. Here you have the same overview and you can then use our Basic Smelter. It now operates as a single entity and you place this down as a single entity. I want to place it here. There is no zooming of this, and as you can also see there, we can build this and it looks nice. And we got this built. It remembered the stuff. It's actually starting from here, but you can also see one of the other things, that one of the limitations is that you have to connect power, you have to connect belts, input belts, you have to connect output belts between each part of the blueprint, because you'd want to make something that's modular and then hook it up to each other. And pipes, that's the same thing. You'd also need to hook that up between blueprint modules. But you know, this does save a bit of time for just stamping it down. I don't think that it's so much the time. I think it's mainly the fact that once you do this, you're removing all of those manual errors. Like, how many times have we built a line like this or like this and then found out that half of those were turned the wrong way, or they are slightly one tile off to one side or the other? Then that's not going to happen with the blueprints because you stamp it down. So that's nice. Now that I've shown you how they actually work, let's get into the limitations, because there are some limitations. We've already been seeing some of it, but I think that there are two things that are really holding this back in a massive way, and they are equally bad. And I need to address this, because this is what prevents it from actually being the feature that we requested, we, the community. The first thing is glaringly obvious when looking at this. It's too small. 4x4 foundations is uselessly small. I've tried building some of my designs, but let's say that I want to build a manufacturer. Yeah, there isn't really any room to make inputs and outputs for this manufacturer. Let's do some designs with refineries. Yeah, I mean, the refinery takes so much space that there isn't really room for on either side to actually include the belts and pipes coming in. And that just makes it not really very good. That also means that you can't do like integrated blueprints, such as here's a blueprint that takes oil in and gets plastic and rubber out, for example. Or here is one that takes the ingredients needed for alkyd aluminium, and then here's a small build that just makes alkyd aluminium. I tried looking at alkyd aluminium. It requires just the smallest module that we can come up with requires 2 refineries. One refinery and another refinery. It requires 6 smelters. You start seeing the problem here. Oops. There. 6 refineries and also 2 constructors as well. So yeah, yeah, and belts, piping, yeah, right. So stuff like that, which would be super cool for me to deliver to you, is like, hey, you want to build plastic? Here's a starter plastic build. You want to build alkyd aluminium? Here is a starter alkyd aluminium. Those can't be done, and that is the size part. I also very much do not like their excuse. They've been blaming the game engine and the item count, and by having a bigger blueprint, people would build bigger factory. That's the worst excuse ever, because how many people are actually bumping up against the entity limit in the world, in the game world? I never even really had any performance issues. It works fine. So there are probably a few that bump up against this limit. But that means that everyone else, the 99.99% of players, cannot get a useful build tool because the 0.01 is bumping in against the entity limit. They have limited the feature for their core audience in order to have the people who know that they're pushing the limits not break the game. Sorry, if you break the game and put too many entities in, you should just get a pop-up that says you win, remove some entities before you can continue. There we go. I think it's much better if you have a problem with entity count, then don't force us to build these giant factories. Give us Mark 2, 3, 4, 5 refineries that are faster and better and stronger and more expensive, so that late game we don't need 20 of those or 100 of those. We need 10. Like this build down here is a power plant that has 160 power, and it's just, it never does anything, but it still has to do calculations and entities and all that crap. But it's not really necessary. But it's the game forcing us to build more entities. And then, of course, we want blueprints so we can automate it. But it just seems like a bad way of limiting. You're limiting for the wrong people. The people who build big factories are going to build big factories anyway. And setting this as the limit is ruining the fun for everyone. So this is something I think it absolutely, without a doubt, must be changed. There we go. I'm not going to mince words about it. Change it. It's awful. It doesn't work. So that's the one thing. The other thing that is equally bad, we just saw that, didn't we? If we look at our blueprint here, our new smelter blueprint that we used, there we go. Well, if we stamp this down, then there is no way for us to have a separate build like that and this connection. There's no way for us to get the connection between one module and another module. That means there's no power connection, there's no belt connection, there's no pipe connection, and there's no rail connection. That is atrocious. I understand that it's complicated, but it's absolutely essential. It is absolutely essential if you want to build this. Like the fact that you'd have to make a special item or something, a special thing that you have built, so that when you build it on the edge, then you can build a special power pole or something like that that sort of says this is an input output, and if it aligns with the other one, then it'll magically snap together. I don't know. Come up with a solution, because if we build our modules and they're okay, we can build modules, and that it's actually I've also shown you how I would be building modules instead of what I just showed you here. So we have like a basic assembler. This is a module that I would build it. Let's get it with the closest thing, because this is much easier to align, he said, and then he misplaced it anyway. Damn it. It is much easier to align, and this is also where we really need an undo button for this. At least I do. Maybe you don't, but I definitely need an undo button for these kind of things. All right, try again. Here is our basic assembler. Paste. Now it got the wrong way, and then you can see it's much easier to paste it down here. There. And it looks really neat, but the fact that these are not connected is just killing so much efficiency of this, and especially in terms of power here. And it actually gets even worse when it comes to rails, because it would be nice if we could build rails, but if they're not connected, then what's the point even? So that's the fact that there are no power, belt, rail, pipe connections. It means that it is a lot less useful, and it's something that I would say put it at the top of your feature list for this function, right after increasing the size. I'm sure that there will be mods that will fix the size, and they probably already exist so that you can build proper blueprints. But then again, I can't. If I do that, then I can't deliver the blueprints to you, because you would have to have the same mod as well, and then it's kind of not not the intention. So those are the two things. There are myriads of other things. There are some problems with alignment in here, and that's why I built it on foundations, because if you don't build it on foundations, there is a chance that the blueprint get misaligned to the grid. Also, if we look at this, like if we build this, even though it is on the line, you can't snap it to the side of things. And if you build it out in the world, if I hold control, it doesn't snap to the global grid. So there are many small things, but I don't care about the small things. I only care about two things that must be fixed for this to be in any way, shape, or form usable. Fix the damn size and make power connections, belt connections, pipe connections, and rail connections. Those things have to be fixed for this to be a useful function. All right, with the talks of limitations out of the way, then let's talk a bit about what it actually is useful for. Like, what are the things that, given this is what we have, what can we use it for right now? Well, I think that there are three types of blueprints, and they are basically the standard simple builds. These are the ones that I have built a few of here, like basic assembler. This is basic manufacturer that has like inputs here, and that's the basic standardized builds that you can plop down and you can build it. Good. Then we have the super compact builds. I want to show you one because, of course, I also built one of those just so that we can see the stacked constructors. Now, this is a blueprint. This is the kind of thing that you'd want to, you'd expect to see in here. Like this blueprint, let me just stamp it down if we can. Well, we can. We can. I just want to make sure that I align it correctly. There we go. So what is this monstrosity? Well, this is, I wanted to sort of use the space as efficiently as possible. So we spent some time on doing a cool design of stacked constructors. Here we have 12 constructors, and it comes in from a single line down here, and it goes up and builds into these locations. There's power lines, there's all of that stuff. But of course, if you want to build this, it looks cool, but honestly, let's be realistic. In 11 out of 12 cases, when I design a factory, I'm not going to need 11. I'm not going to need 12. If I need 10, would I build it like this and remove 2? Probably not. If I needed 13 and 14, I would definitely not build it like this. So if you look at stuff like this, it would replace this line. But is it really, is it better? It's sure it builds pretty quick, but, and it can scale, sure. But I don't know. Also, like, it's full of bugs like this. Yeah, there's still some weird issues with this, but it looks like it's working. I mean, I think this is a cool design, but I don't think it's gonna be something I would really honestly use. But this is the second part, that like the super compact, get the maximum out of your design cube, and I can definitely see that if you build these kind of design cubes and you just spam it all over the world, yeah, sure, you're gonna get a lot of entities. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing that we can look at is also like the aesthetics part. And let's get, like, for example, a road segment like this. There we go. And I always, well, at least at this point, I'm going to build this part here. Probably in this case, I would just only have like the top level, and then I'd find a way to build the top level on top of something else. But here we have it. This, I think, is the most applicable. So let's look at applicability. The standardized builds that we have, such as this. Let's see. Is that correct? I don't know. Maybe it is. There. These standardized builds, and I think they are going to be somewhat useful. I wish they could do more than they are doing in terms of just sizing. So you could build more of these, but hey, the idea is there. It looks neat, and you can build that. So this definitely saves some clicks. Here's also the example. This looks like it's working, but these two belts are actually not connected. It was just a test I did. So these are useful. This one, I know that some people love making these, and there will definitely be like files exchange of really convoluted builds. I don't think it's particularly useful. I don't think it's particularly interesting. It's a fun design challenge, but yeah, nothing more than that. I think where it really excels is stuff like this. aesthetics, you have like a special door to your entrance, you have some signs, you have some road segments, you have those kind of things, and then you can build them in a 4x4, and that's pretty neat. And since this does not have to scale, or does not have to be connected with rail segments or anything like that, then this is just gonna work instantly. So if we build like another one here, as long as you match them up against each other, then this is a quick way to actually make rails or make roads. And I think this is going to be the most useful part. Of course, maybe do something else on the bottom part, but you know, this part is definitely useful here. You'd still need to be firing up all of these. All the way down, because yeah, that's just how it works. And so that's useful. And in terms of, I was also building a rail segment as well, which I think is pretty cool as well, if that worked, but it does not. Oh, it doesn't build the rails, does it? Oh, it did build the rails, but again, we tested it and the rails do not connect. They look like they're connected, but they don't sort of have that internal tag link to another object that says that it's connected. So this is a pipe dream for now, but it would certainly help in terms of doing that. So that is I would say the 3 different types of builds. Like standardized builds, yes, useful, but limited by the 4x4 and the lack of connectivity. The really big convoluted builds, I don't know. I think those would be crazy when it gets bigger than 4x4. But you know, I don't find those particularly interesting. And then the aesthetic parts, that's the real time saver is coming in for the aesthetics. So let's move on to the conclusion. Well, the conclusion, as you can probably determine, I am not impressed. I think that the size and the lack of connectivity is ruining any useful part about this. It also clear that the things that are important for a factory game, like connectivity and making bigger useful modules that you actually can have something in, that is not catered for, but the stuff that is just aesthetics is catered for. And that just seems to be the tendency I'm seeing in Satisfactory, that it's more of an architecture game than a factory game. And I find that to be a shame, because it's a beautiful game, has so much potential. It is a great game, but I just wish they would treat it like a factory game instead of an architecture game. And yeah, so I'm not going to be starting any Update 7 new series, because I just don't think there's anything new to do. I'll not be making masterclasses for these kind of things. If we get connecting belts, pipes, power, and rails, sure, then it's going to be super useful, and bigger builds, then definitely you can see like standardized designs for me, like rail intersections, road intersections, all those cool things. I will happily make those. But until then, I'm just going to wait for 1.0 at this rate. So I hope this is certainly a fair, and I don't know if it's unbiased, but it gives me my bias on this feature, and both how you can use it, how it's useful, and what it's not useful for. So I hope you find it useful, this video. If you did, hit the like button and consider subscribing. And there are lots of other games, luckily, that we have plenty of fun with, that we can build. So check out those here on the channel. Thank you for watching. Until next time, take care and stay effective.